for joining us on The Skeptic Psychic, where we delve into ancient societies, the ghosts, the paranormal, UFOs, all looking at it from the perspective of the true believer and from the skeptic perspective. Joining me, my partner, my co-host, my sibling, Kimber Rodriguez. Myself, I am Richard Gregg. And again, let's look into being the skeptic psychic.
Hello.
Hello, how we doing? And welcome once again to the Skeptic Psychic, which to me is a wonderful way to communicate my hopes, dreams, and research and development of things that I really enjoy discussing. And for this month, again, is the UFO month of July, cultivating the fact that the first the 4th of July weekend back in 1947 started off this great uh, my my joy of this topic. With me, of course, is my wonderful, beautiful, talented, highly successful sister of mine, Kimber Rodriguez.
Hey, how are you doing?
I'm doing fine. How are you doing? And
Pretty.
see, even somebody agrees with me in the background, chuckling at the wonderful and smart and talented and highly successful you are.
He's more chuckling at the movie he's watching.
Ah,
Um, I have not been happy with this program the past few weeks. As you can see, we got some flickering going on with the green screen, and that's because I have my green screen behind me and it's still flickering. Excuse me, I've been very hoarse for the past week. Also, got a little pony stuck in my throat. Um, but so I'm thinking about trying out a new program to see if that works better for us. So again, I do apologize right now for the flickering. Hopefully by next week we can get that fixed, as well as the problem that I've been having with the chat saying something went wrong, reload the page.
yes, I have Mr. Chat. Where are our podlings out there?
Yes, our pod people.
Yes, where are our pod people?
Yes, we miss you all. Come back to us. But I digress. If you are watching on YouTube, make sure you like and subscribe and click the notification, as well as with Twitch, like and subscribe. And if you're listening to a replay on Apple Podcast or one of those, we do ask that you rate and review us. And how many ratings do we like, bro?
Uh, we like a one, a two, a three, four, five. We like 5 stars. Stars are always good. Five.
Yes, we
The
do
number
like
five. Five is the magic number. Don't worry about 3 or 4, just a five.
5 stars, but we'll take whatever you give us. And if you do leave us a rating, please review us and let us know how we're doing. If you think we could do better, let us know in a constructive way how we can improve. Um, but let's go ahead and kick into tonight's topic. What are we talking about tonight?
We were talking about Project Blue Book, which you said last week you knew nothing about, and you were like, what is this thing called Blue Book? Why do we care about something called Blue Book? And what in the world is, was, and shall ever be known as Project Blue Book? That was your questions. That was your procedure. That was your thoughts in your head. As I said, it's a great topic to discuss because, again, it all goes back to what happened in 1947. And the government's research organization started off with the rumored crash in Roswell of 1947. The U.S. Air Force, as well as many other military organizations, were concerned about the surge of UFO sightings and the public concerns due to the speculative nature of these identified craft. The report spawned 2 shows and a lot of theories about a secret establishment. But was it really the story behind it? Tonight, let's look into it. The surge. In the late 1940s and the early 50s, there was a significant increase in reports of UFO sightings across the United States. These sites caused public concern and speculation about the nature of these two identical crafts, with 2 other famous cases being the Ken Arnold sighting, which basically happened 2 months before the UFO crash in 1947. And
This right?
19, and can these actually happen within 2 months of one another? The Kenneth Arnold sighting and then the Roswell crash.
Okay. Mine got a little messed up here. So is this where I'm supposed to pick up, or?
You pick up with what you believe. What was the first research group called?
Okay. That's what I thought, but I wasn't sure because mine is a little different than yours, which I knew I'd added parts to yours, but I digress. ADHD, sorry.
No
Um,
problem.
well, Project Sign was the first official U.S. Air Force study into the UFOs and all of that fun stuff. And it was established back in 1947, a year before mom was born and 2 years before dad.
Yep.
It was initiated in response to the increasing number of sightings that were reported by the military as well as civilians and pilots. The project's name, Sign, was derived from the idea that these UFOs represented a potential sign of advanced technology that was developed, or it could be security threats. So it was prompted by the infamous Roswell incident that occurred, as we mentioned before, back in July of 1947. Again, this is where a UFO crashed in Roswell, New Mexico.
Supposedly.
Supposedly, exactly. And even though it was established after Roswell, um, it did use, it was not indirectly investigating Roswell, but it focused more on the UFO stuff. And it did adopt a more open minded and scientific orientation when it came to UFO investigations. It involved a panel of military and civilian experts.
Which
These,
supposedly may have been the magic or majestic gentleman.
yes, these included scientists and intelligence personnel. And these people their job was to analyze and assess the UFO reports that were coming around, or coming in, I should say, not around, but they were coming in. People were saying, I saw a flying light, and it tried to get me and my dog, and
You just don't do
okay,
it
we're
right.
going to go investigate that.
You just don't really do it right. You really gotta get that really fast smoking. And start talking about them. My break big brother from Slough, his sister's brothers coming.
Now, come on. You know us Southerners do not talk fast. We
Yes, we
are
do.
slow people. We take our time. We relax. We don't
Yeah,
have
yeah,
to
sure,
be
sure,
super
sure, sure,
fast.
sure, sure. That's what they all want you to believe because everybody can understand that you never understand the greater society
Okay,
side.
so tell us more about Project Sign.
Now, Sign itself was the most significant and controversial documentation, with the estimate of the situation document completed in the summer of 1948. That's the summer. The classified report concluded that some of the UFO sightings were likely to be extraterrestrial alignment and of origin. However, the conclusion was not universally accepted within the military, and they were objective from the high ranking officers. Mainly, the U.S. Air Force Chief of Staff, General Hoyt Vandenberg. Now, he believed his conclusions of the estimate of the situation in early of 1949 was a rejection of those ideas and contributing that the UFO sightings to extraterrestrial origins, and the report was not shelved and kept classified, or was shelved and kept classified. Give me my the official skeptic psychic Pet has just made its presence known here, so please forgive me while it sits there on my. Now, General Van Hoyt is an interesting character, or Hoyt Vandenberg. General Hoyt Sanford Vandenberg, born January 24th, 1899, and died April 2nd, 1954, was a highly respected military officer in the United States Air Force and played a significant role in the shaping and development and operations of the United States Air Force during the mid 20th century. He had tried various prominent positions. He held, not tried, he held prominent military installations, including serving as the second chief of staff of the United States Air Force. He did attend the United States Military Academy at West Point and graduated in 1923. He began his military career as an Army officer before transferring into the Army Air Corps, which would be the predecessor of what today we call the United States Air Force. During World War II, General Vanderveer was served in various leaderships roles in the Air Corps. He also played a crucial role in planning and executing strategic bombing campaigns against the Axis power. General Vandenberg was an influential in shaping the Allied air strategy in Europe, including the use of long-range bombing missions.
I wonder if our uncle, being in the Air Force, ever saw anything. Have you ever asked him about it?
No, I never have.
Might be curious to ask sometime.
Maybe someday.
Yes. But I digress. Back in March of 1944, Vandenberg was promoted to the rank of Major General. This made him one of the youngest officers to hold the rank at the time. After the war, meaning World War II, Vanderbilt did continue to be involved in high-level military operations and planning. He was appointed as Deputy Chief of Air Staff for Operations and later the Director of the CIA back in 1946. Which reminds me, I saw a really good movie about the CIA yesterday. Remind me to tell you about it.
Okay.
In 1948, Vandenberg became the second Chief of Staff in the U.S. Air Force, succeeding General Carl Spaatz. As his tenure as Chief of Staff, he worked to strengthen the Air Force's capabilities and advocated for its independence as a separate military branch. So correct me if I'm wrong. There was a time when the Air Force was like part of the Army.
Yes.
And so he was wanting to break apart and be its own branch.
Exactly. He was one of the founding fathers of the United States Air Force.
Interesting. So tell me about the famous base in California named after him.
Well, like I stated, the fact he was one of the founding fathers of the United States Air Force. Vandenberg Air Force Base in California is named in honor of General Hoyt Vandenberg. It is one of the most important military facilities of space and missile testing, satellite launches, and national security missions. Vandenberg's leadership and contributions was instrumental in the growth and modernization of the United States Air Force. Highly respected for his strategic thinking and dedication to the advancement of the Air Force capabilities. General Hoyt Vandenberg's military career and impact on the United States Air Force continues to be recognized and celebrated as a crucial period in the development of the modern Air Force and the advancement of military aviation. So with that, the Air Force decides to create another investigation team. Let's call it Project Grudge.
Yes, Project Grudge was a U.S. Air Force project that was established back in 1949, and this succeeded Project Sign. Now, this one was informed to investigate and evaluate the reports of UFOs, and their primary goal was to analyze sightings and provide explanations that would debunk or dismiss them as misidentified objects, natural occurrences, or hoaxes. Therefore, their skeptical approach contrasted with the more open minded stance of the predecessor, being the Project Sign. So basically, Project Sign was like, okay, well, this could be some advanced technology that we can use, or it could be a security threat we need to be aware of. Then Project Grudge came around, and the word grudge, they were more like, okay, let's see how we can disprove this and show that this is all fake.
Mm-hmm.
And this was initiated after the controversial estimate of the situation. This was a report from Project Sign, and it had suggested that some sightings might be of extraterrestrial origin, and some are just, can be explained easily. In response, the Air Force did seek to adopt a more critical and dismissive stance against these reports. The main object of Grudge was to explain away UFO sightings by attributing them again to mundane causes, such as, misidentified aircraft, military technology that we're not aware of, weather balloons, as in the case of Roswell, and lately the stuff that's been seen out there. Also, it could be astronomical events such as, meteorites, or just plain out hoaxes.
Space gas.
Yes. The critics of Project Grudge did argue that the project lacked a thorough scientific investigation of the reports. Instead, the emphasis seemed to be on quickly dismissing the case without conducting comprehensive research or analysis. So basically, what they're saying is, instead of taking the time to really investigate this and see if this really was a UFO, they would just be like, not really put any effort into it and just say, oh, well, it was this or oh, it was that. But they didn't really investigate the situation.
Yes. They basically would not, they were the ones that basically would say swamp gas.
Mm-hmm.
Excuse me? Swamp gas. It kind of, ignites out of this, somehow when we say swamp gas, we're talking about the swamp farts. And they know that's exactly what it was. Swamp farts.
Swamp farts. Or it could be, hey, we just got a meteor, it came down, shooting down. But where's the meteor? We don't know. Maybe it burned up in the atmosphere.
Yes. Now,
Right.
despite its skepticism and lack of scientific rigor, Project Grudge continued until 1951, when it was replaced by, ladies and gentlemen, Project Blue Book. Now, Project Blue Book was aimed to be a more objective and systematic study of the UFO sightings, and this study continued until 1969. Grudge's dismissal of
69 dudes.
Yes, Grudge's dismissal approach to UFO sightings contributed to the growing public just skepticism and dissatisfaction with the U.S. Air Force in handling of the UFO phenomenon. The project's reputation for debunking and dismissing UFO reports have led an ongoing speculation and conspiracy theories about potential government cover-ups regarding UFO sightings and extraterrestrial counters. Thus, skeptical dismissal of Project Grudge led to an open-minded approach to what is now known as Project Blue Book. Enter Dr. J. Allen Hynek. Dr.
Yes.
J, born on May 1st, 1910, was an astrophysicist and astronomer. He played a crucial role in the formation of Project Blue Book. Previously, he had served as consultant for Project Sign and Project Grudge. Despite being initially skeptical of the UFO claims, his experience with some sightings led to adapt a more scientific approach and open-minded to the phenomenon. And able to open more thought and research and thoughts instead of just blowing it off. Sadly, he left us on April 27th in 1986.
Now, a little bit more about Hynek. He did receive his PhD in astrophysics from the University of Chicago back in 1935. Then he became a professor of astronomy at Ohio State. He also worked at Yerkes Observatory. Yerkes in a way! Sorry. Um, he did focus there on study of stellar evolution and spectroscopy. Now, don't ask me what spectroscopy is. That might be something you want to look up because I have no clue. I'm just telling you what I was told. And he was initially skeptical of UFOs,
That's
but
basically the study of light, the spectrum.
oh, okay. Well, he was initially skeptical of UFO claims, and he was hired as a consultant from a scientific point of view for Project Sign. And he continued in the same capacity during Project Grudge, and then eventually stayed on once it became Project Blue Book. Over time, however, his skepticism did become softened. Um, the more he encountered the cases of UFOs that could not be explained, the more he became an advocate for a more scientific and objective study for UFO reports, um, thinking that they needed a more serious investigation into this phenomenon.
Do, 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 do.
Hynek is also credited with introducing the concept of categorizing UFO sightings based on their proximity to witnesses. He coined the terms that we all know we're very aware of the close encounters, meaning the first, second, and third kind. These he classified in his, he spoke about in his book, The UFO Experience, a Scientific Inquiry. That book was published back in 1972.
In 1973, Alan J. Hynek founded the Center for UFO Studies, also known as CUFOS. It was a privately funded organization dedicated to the scientific study of the UFO reports. CUFOS sought to apply rigorous scientific methodologies to UFO investigations. Throughout his life, Dr. Hynek remained actively involved in the UFO research and continued to advocate for more serious and unbiased examinations of the sightings. He conducted investigations, published books, participated in numerous conferences and seminars. His legacy is considered one of the most influential figures in the history of UFO research. His dedication to applying scientific principles in the study of sightings helped legitimize the subject and encourage other scientists to take on an interest in the phenomenon.
Do, 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 do.
His classification system for close encounters remains widely recognized and used in most popular cultures. Now, his journey from being a skeptic scientist consultant is a respected advocate for a serious study of illustrates the complexities of involving nature of the phenomenon and its studies. His contributions have had a lasting impact on how the UFOs are investigated and how they are understood today. In fact, Dr. J. Allen Hynek, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, made a cameo in one of the most prolific movies of the 70s on the UFO phenomenon, namely Steven Spielberg's 1977 Close Encounters of the Third Kind, where Dr. Hynek played a research scientist at at the end, towards the end of the movie, questioning and witnessing the UFO. Spoiler alert! Arriving on top of that mountain.
Yeah, the only thing again I remember from that movie is the part where everybody's leaving town and they're trying to evacuate, telling everyone that there's an epidemic of anthrax,
Mm-hmm.
or should I say pandemic. So they're trying to run everybody out of town, but that's the only thing I remember of that movie. I probably need to see it again.
Yes. Another great scene is Richard Dreyfuss building a mountain of mashed potatoes.
Now, is there a scene where the house is being invaded by something, or is that Invasion of the Body Snatchers?
There's actually a scene in the movie where lights are flashing and you see shadows darting around. At the beginning of the movie, when the little boy is watching all the lights and experiencing it.
Okay, I wasn't sure if that was a memory from that movie or a memory from Invasion of the Body Snatchers. Because remind you, I was very, very little when I saw
Hmm.
these movies. I mean, they came out in '77. I was born in '76, so
Right,
this had to be early '80s that I saw it.
right.
Yes. Now, here are some famous cases that Project Blue Book follows. Again, although the Roswell incident did occur before the establishment, it is one of the most well known UFO cases in history. After the crash, the U.S.
Harmony,
Army initially reported they had recovered a flying.
harmony, and the night I be, and the Sioux, Mama Marines.
Yes, they initially reported they had recovered a flying disc. However, it was later retracted, and the debris was identified of a weather balloon, which I still believe that's what it was. That's my opinion. I could be wrong, but that's what I think. Um, the incident does remain a subject of speculation, and conspiracy theories about a potential government cover up of an extraterrestrial space crash have developed. Now, mind you, a lot of this conspiracy has to do with the fact that they first said it was a disc and then they retracted and said, oh no, it's just a weather balloon. We were wrong. As well as some other little things that have come up that have been hush hushed. Um,
Hush, hush, I thought I heard. Oh.
Sorry, my husband's watching a movie over here and he's laughing quite a bit at it. I apologize if
Hmm.
it's distracting. In 1951, residents of Lubbock, Texas, I could go into a song with that too,
Yes.
but they did report a series of lights flying in a V formation across the night sky. The lights were described as elongated and bluish green. Project Blue Book did investigate the sightings and initially suggested that they were just birds reflecting off the city lights.
Right. Quick trivia question. There are three famous musicians that came from that town. Can you name the three musicians?
George Jones,
Nope.
no?
Nope.
Well, you tell me then.
Buddy Holly,
Buddy Holly.
Waylon Jennings,
Waylon, that's the one.
and Mac Davis.
Knew it was Mac something, and I think Mac Davis was the one who sang that song, right? Or
Yes.
no? You
Yes.
know which song I'm thinking of, right?
Yes.
Lubbock,
Lubbock,
Texas
Texas
is my
in my
yeah,
review mirror.
yes, love that song, but I digress.
Yeah.
Anyway, they were saying that these lights were just birds reflecting in the city lights. However, the birds' explanation was met with a lot of skepticism, and the case does still remain unexplained to this day.
So
In 1952, a series of UFO sightings did occur over Washington, D.C., and the, sorry, one second, Mercy. Sorry, got distracted by Mercy. Okay, so in 1952, a series of UFO sightings did occur over Washington, D.C. as radar operators at Andrews Air Force Base and Washington National National Airport, not Air Force, but airport, tracked unidentified blips, blips, blips on their radar screens. Also, there were several visual sightings. Now, these were reported by both pilots and civilians. However, again, Project Blue Book said that these sightings were due to temperature inversions that caused radar anomalies and weather phenomenon. So some witnesses do remain unconvinced. And I can kind of see this because, yeah, they're saying that the blips, now those can be, temperature inversions and, different things with the weather can affect the radars and give them a weird reading. But how does that explain the things that we're seeing with the naked eye that the witnesses saw, such as the pilots and the people?
Mm-hmm. Now, one of the earliest reported abduction cases, the most famous and most controversial, were the Betty and Barney Hill abduction case.
Not to be confused with Benny Hill.
Now, Betty and Barney Hill, I like to stress this fact, were a biracial couple.
Good for them.
Yes, Betty was a white woman, and Barney was a gentleman of color.
Vice versa.
Huh?
Vice versa.
What do you mean?
I think that Betty was African American and Barney was
No. Betty was white. Barney was black.
Either way, I don't care. Go on, though.
I'm just sorry. They believed that they were abducted by extraterrestrial beings while driving through New Hampshire. Under hypnosis, they recounted a detailed story of the medical examinations conducted by these alleged aliens. Project Blue Book dismissed this case as a probable hoax or as a result of a stress-related hallucinations. However, the case has since become a significant part of UFO lore and abduction narratives.
Now, I remember seeing something about this on the History Channel, and they mentioned something that had to do with her dress.
Yes.
Either it was torn in a way that was like they could tell it wasn't by scissors or by a rip, or something spilled on it that was unidentified. But I can't remember exactly.
Both.
Both?
Both.
Okay. I just remember they couldn't identify it.
And Barney also had a similar situation inside of his underwear.
And they couldn't tell what it was?
And they couldn't tell what it was.
She had it on his dress. He had it on his underwear. They were a married couple, mind you.
Yes. But the last but not least brief explanation is the April 1964 police officer in Sirocco, New Mexico, called by the name of Lonnie Zamora. He reported that seeing a flying saucer land. And then when he went to investigate it, he saw it take off vertically with a loud roar. Now, Blue Book classified the incident as unknown, meaning that they could not determine a conventional explanation for the sighting. Now, of course, we've discussed Roswell so many countless times, but we do want to go over a few more of the ones we want to go in depth with the ones we do have. Namely, let's start off with the Lubbock Lights. Now, the Lubbock Lights is one of the most famous UFO sightings in history, and again, August of 1951, over Lubbock, Texas, which is not far, 2.5 hours away from Roswell, New Mexico. Now, key details about the Lubbock Lights incident include. What do they include?
Now, see, I always thought the Lubbock was on the other side near Dallas. So that's very interesting. My geography's off. Huh. Well, the initial sighting was reported by 3 Texas Tech college professors. This is before it was Texas Tech and known as Texas Technological College. These professors were Dr. W.I. Robinson, Dr. A.G. Oberg, and Dr. W.L. Ducker. Now, later, many residents in Lubbock did report seeing the same lights over a course of several nights.
Interesting.
However, witnesses described the lights as bright, elongated, and again, bluish green. They reported that the lights moved silently in the form of a V. No, that's a W, so a V. V going.
V.
Yes.
V.
Not a W, but a V.
Yeah.
And on August 31st, hey, my anniversary,
Mm-hmm.
back in 1951, Carl Hart Jr. was a student at Texas Tech, and he managed to capture the lights in a photograph. The lights did attract the attention of the U.S. Air Force, and Project Blue Book launched an investigation. Initially, they proposed that the lights were caused by a natural phenomenon called night flying moths. Now, I don't know about you, but I've never seen a moth or a group of moths fly in a V shape. Usually they fly all willy wonk, like, crazy all over
Mm-hmm.
the place. I've never seen them in a V.
Looking at the when you turn on the porch light at night, and when all the moths go to it, they flicker around it. They don't go into a V shape.
No, they don't. I've seen moths are a lot like that butterflies, and how they fly south for their mating season and stuff. So I've seen multiple of these creatures flying at once together, and never have they been in a V shape. They've all been like a swarm. So it makes sense that this was met with skepticism, as witnesses did insist that this was not caused by any birds or insects. The birds I could probably say okay, but not the moths. I'm sorry.
Right. Now, some have just suggested that the lights themselves could have been an early tests with flares and other aircrafts done by the United States Air Force. So that could possibly bring in the fact that they could have been doing some secret testing.
That makes
However,
sense.
however, the Air Force denies any involvement in that situation.
Of course they did. If they're doing some testing for security reasons, they're not going to go out and tell the public. I mean, they don't want the enemies to know what they're testing, so that's going to be
Right.
kept in shut by the government. That makes
Right.
sense.
Yeah. Dr. Hynek investigated, and he's the one that says night moths.
I'm going to have to look up that. I'm going to look that up and post it in our group to see how night moths fly. If you want to see that evidence, you can join our Facebook group. We've got it right up here. Just click on or snatch a picture of the barcode, and you can join our Facebook group. And I'll post
Right.
on there how night moths fly. But
Now,
I
the
digress.
Washington,
Continue.
D.C. sighting of 1952 was a series of events that took over 2 consecutive weekends, occurring July of 1952. Now, that's 5 years after the Roswell event.
What is it about the summer months that attracts these things? I mean, August to July.
Mhm.
Is it something about the warm air and the temperature?
Possibly. Now, the sightings involved unidentified objects detected by the radar and virtually observed by multiple witnesses, including military personnel, commercial pilots, and air traffic controllers. That's 3 credible witnesses. They had garnered significant media attention and prompted the U.S. Air Force to conduct an extensive investigation through Blue Book. The sightings began July 12th, 1952. Now that was, let's see, a young Dixie would actually be 4 years old when this happened.
This would be our mother.
It
So the
happened.
people know who Dixie is.
Now, this actually happened at Washington National Airport, which is now Ronald Reagan. It detected several unknown blips on their radar screens. These objects were observed moving in an unusual pattern and speeds. Around the same time, airline pilots in the area reported seeing bright lights of objects in the sky that seemed almost to be following them.
Yes. Now, the second weekend of sightings occurred on July 19th through the 20th. Um, Once again, radar operators at both Washington National Airport and Andrews Air Force Base reported these unidentified blips on their radar screens. Visual sightings were also reported by pilots and witnesses that were on the ground. Now, the influx of UFO reports and the radar visual confirmation prompted the Air Force to take the sightings seriously. They had a press conference on July 29th back in 1952, which the Air Force then confirmed the radar contacts, but suggested again they were probably caused by temperature inversions. And, this is again a phenomenon that can create radar anomalies. So that makes sense if it's because, like I said before, a lot of these things seem to be happening in the summer. So it could be something with the temperature that's causing these, maybe the humidity or I don't know what with the summer that's causing these blips to happen with the radars. But it's very interesting that, these things all seem to happen around the same time of year. Major General John A. Sanford was the director for intelligence of the U.S. Air Force, and he led the conference presenting the Air Force explanation for these sightings. He emphasized that no evidence of extraterrestrial spacecrafts were found and that the radar contacts were attributed to these weather related factors. Right. Okay.
Right now,
Again,
the
it could be because, like I said, they all seem to happen around the same time of year.
right now the Washington D.C. sightings received widespread media coverage, leading to the increased public interest in UFOs. The Air Force explanation did not fully satisfy the public. Many people remained skeptical, and particularly due to the number of credible witnesses involved. Despite that, the Air Force explanation and researchers and enthusiasts questioned the official account. They argued that the radar visual sightings by experimental pilots and military personnel were unlikely to be solely caused by weather phenomenon. Again, emphasis: experienced pilots, military personnel, civilian observers. Oh, it's just a radar. These people actually saw something.
They actually saw something with their eyes,
Yes,
not just on the radar.
exactly.
But again, they're discounting they're not even looking into the actual seeing with the physical eye. They're only looking at what they saw on the radar.
Right.
So makes you wonder.
And we bop on into Betty and Barney again because they are most well known and controversial abduction case in history. It involves the claimed abduction of the interracial couple. They were also very prolific, not for their UFO experience, but in the civil rights organizations because they were a interracial couple. Now, in rural New Hampshire of September of 1961, uh, re- uh, extensively investigated by researchers and later becoming one of the subjects of many books. Now, who are Betty and Barney Hill?
Well, Barney Hill was born in 1922, and he passed away in February 25th of 1969. And this was before his wife Betty. He died of a cerebral hemorrhage at the age of 46. This was nearly 8 years after the alleged incident. So that makes me wonder if maybe the incident had something to do with his
Maybe.
hemorrhage, as they do say that some things did happen to them while they were abducted. Betty, however, lived from June 28th, 1919, all the way up to October 17th, 2004. This is making her outlive her husband by several decades. And she continued to be an advocate for their abduction and UFO research throughout the rest of her life. Betty passed away at the age of 85. Now, on the night of September 19th through the 20th, again, so I'm thinking probably late 19th into the morning of the 20th, back in 1961, they were returning home from Portsmouth, New Hampshire, after vacationing in Canada. Oh, Canada. As they drove through a remote section of New Hampshire's White Mountains, they reported observing a strange light in the sky, again, that seemed to be following them.
Mm-hmm.
The Hills claimed that at some point during their drive, they experienced a period of missing time. For about 2 hours, they couldn't account for. They just kind of like, it was 1 minute, it was like, say, 10:50. The next minute, it was like 12:50. So they're like, okay, what happened here? And they did arrive home later than they expected. But again, they couldn't figure out what happened with that time. Where did it go?
Right. In the months following the incident, Betty and Barney Hill began experiencing disturbing dreams and anxiety related to their alleged encounter. They sought help of Dr. Benjamin Simon, a psychiatrist. Dr. Simon conducted a series of hypnosis sections to help them recover memories of what had happened during their missing time. During the sessions, both Betty and Barney Hill recalled being taken aboard a spacecraft by non-human entities, describing medical examinations, communication to telepathy, and encounters with described as gray aliens with large eyes. In 1965, the story of Betty and Barney, alleged abduction, was published by John G. Fuller, entitled The Interrupted Journey. The case was received with significant media attention and sparked widespread public interest in the UFO abductions. Betty and Barney's case is often considered one of the earliest and most influential of the abduction cases and stories. It's been popularized the notion that the alien abductions and introducing into many of classical elements associated with such encounters, including missing time, medical examinations, and interactions with gray aliens.
Speaking of abductions, I would love to do an episode on the fourth kind sometime. And I don't know if you've heard of that, but it was there was a movie based on it where these people, went to like under hypnosis, they all figured out that they had been abducted or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
I think that would be interesting to look into and do an episode on sometime. So if you're interested in us doing an episode on that, let us know. But back to Betty and Barney. While their account did gain a lot of attention and support from ufologists and abduction researchers, yes, there are two different things. It is faced with skepticism and criticism. Some suggested that the abduction narrative might have been a result of stress-induced hallucinations, which doesn't make sense to me because it's something that both of them experienced. So I don't see how stress-induced hallucinations would account for both of them. I mean, account for one person seeing something, but I don't think the other person would see the exact same thing.
Well, interesting to note also on this, they were always interviewed separately under hypnosis. So,
Sorry. Another thing that could be possible, I agree with this, is it could have been false memories planted through the hypnosis. I definitely think that that could be a possibility that they could have been planted there during
Hmm.
their visit with the psychiatrist.
Right.
But let's go ahead and move on to the Sirocco case, as it has always been called the Lonnie Zamora incident. Now, this is one of the most well documented and intriguing sightings in the history of ufology. It occurred on April 24th in 1964 near Socorro, New Mexico. Have you ever been there?
Not yet, but would like to.
Yes, would love to check that out. And it involved an encounter that was witnessed by a reputable police officer named Lonnie Zamora. Now, at the time of the sighting, he was well regarded as an officer in the community and known for his honesty and integrity. However, on the afternoon of April 24th, back in 1964, while in pursuit of a high speed car chase, he heard a loud roar and saw a flame in the sky. Initially, he thought this must be an overturned car or a dynamite shack explosion. I have seen a car overturn in an accident, and it does make a very loud sound, so that could be very possible. But as he approached the area, he saw a strange craft shaped like an egg on the ground. There was no visible windows or markings on it, but there were two beings standing next to the craft. He did describe them as being human like, and they were wearing white coveralls with a distinctive insignia that one has never seen before.
NASA.
Well, no, because people would have known what NASA was.
1964. I doubt that very seriously.
Oh, come on. They had already been to the moon.
1964?
Okay, no,
No.
they hadn't been to the moon, but they had been in space. So I'm sure people know what the NASA symbol looks like.
I'm not sure about that.
Continue.
Now, when Zamora approached closer, the craft made a loud sound and took off vertically, disappearing into the sky. It left behind impressions on the ground and scratch marks. These marks were later investigated by law enforcement and Air Force personnel. The Lani Zamora incident attracted the attention of Project Blue Book. Investigations interviewed Zamora and examined the site. While the Air Force never offered an official explanation, the case was labeled as unknown. One of the most significant factors that distinguished the incident is the credibility of the witness, Lani Zamora. He was considered a reliable and credible witness due to his status as a police officer with a clean record. Now, the Sirocco case remains one of the most famous and compelling sightings in history. It has been studied by researchers and has become a classic case that is often cited in discussion of UFO encounters and the search for extraterrestrial intelligence.
Now, the project has also had some media attention with TV shows. There was Project UFO and Project Blue Book. Project UFO was an American television series that aired way back in 1978 to 1979, and it was created by Dr. J. Allen Hynek himself. The show was a fictionalized drama that portrayed investigations into UFO sightings by the Air Force's Project Blue Book. The series did follow the investigations of two U.S. Air Force officers assigned to Project Blue Book. There was Captain Ben Ryan, that was played by William Jordan, and S. Sergeant Fitz, who was played by Kasky Swain.
That's Staff Sergeant Fitz.
Oh, okay. Well, it just says S. Sergeant. I'm not in the military, so I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
However, the two traveled across the United States, interviewing witnesses and attempting to determine the nature of the reported UFO sightings. The show did draw inspiration from the real UFO cases documented during the Project Blue Book investigations. and many episodes were actually based on the reported sightings. However, they did, of course, take creative liberties with the details. They had to spice it up, make it more exciting, or people wouldn't watch.
Right. The show adapted a semi documentary style, with each episode introduction by a narrator providing the contents of the UFO case being depicted, and the format aimed to give that show a sense of authenticity and realism.
Okay, you're starting to sound like the Twilight Zone guy.
As the creator, Dr. J. Allen Hynek served as a consultant and advisor. His involvement added credibility to the series, as he was a prominent figure in the study of UFO and had worked on both Project Blue Book as well as his predecessors. Project UFO received mixed reviews during its brief run. Some viewers appreciated its attempt to incorporate real cases and its portrayal of investigations. Others criticized it as occasionally cheesy special effects and dramatization.
Now, I love the special effects from the past. I'm always like, because even if you watch like from the 90s
Yes,
and you see some of the effects they have back then, I'm just like, oh my gosh, you gotta love the effects of the 90s, or you gotta love
well,
the effects of the 80s. They were
the,
all
the whole
cheesy.
the whole Steve Austin running in slow motion, but it's supposed to be really fast. You know,
Yes, I mean all of it was just it's cheesy across the board. Nobody in the past had good effects, but they did the best of what they could with what they had.
right.
So, as I digress, Project UFO did aim to capitalize on the public's fascination with the UFOs and government investigations during the late 70s. However, it was relatively short lived. Nevertheless, it does remain a curiosity for UFO enthusiasts and fans of classic sci fi television from that era. It is a portrayal of UFO investigations with a fictional framework allowed users to explore viewers to explore the mysterious and intriguing world of these sightings and the government's conspiracies or inquiries. Now, there was also Project Blue Book, and this was a historical drama that aired from January 8th of 2019 to March 24th of 2020. So this is more recent.
Hmm.
This show was created by David O'Leary and executive produced by Robert Zemeckis. Now, why does that name sound very familiar to me?
Please, Eddie, I didn't mean to do it.
Okay.
Marty, my God, we've got to go back to the future.
So he's one of the best directors of our time, I guess you could say.
He directed the Back to the Future trilogy as well as Who Framed Roger Rabbit.
So one of the best directors of our time.
Possibly.
Didn't say the best, but I said one of the best.
Yep.
Um, and it was inspired by the real life Project Blue Book. It does follow the fictionalized accounts of Dr. J. Allen Hynek, who was played by Aidan Gillen, alongside Air Force Captain Michael Quinn, who was played by Michael Malarkey.
Well, what a name.
Right? That guy's just a bunch of malarkey.
Yes. His whole family's malarkey.
Right?
I'm sorry, Mr. Malarkey, if we are making fun of your name. It's just, I do apologize. We're not trying to say that you aren't a great actor and your family must be a wonderful group.
Yes. Now, Hynek delves into various cases involving potential ET encounters and government conspiracies.
While Blue Book is a fictionalized drama, it incorporates real cases and events from the original Project Blue Book investigations, such as the Lubbock Lights and the Washington, D.C. sightings of 1952. Over the course of the series, Dr. Hynek, his character undergoes a transformation from a skeptical scientist to someone more open to the possibility of extraterrestrial encounters. This mirrors the real life evolution of Dr. Hynek's views on UFOs. Now, Project Blue Book received mixed reviews from critics and audiences. While some praised the show's performances and an intriguing historical backdrop, Others criticized its fictional elements and deviations from the real events. Despite gaining a dedicated fan base, Project Blue Book was canceled after 2 seasons, leaving some storylines unresolved. As a dramatic TV series, Project Blue Book aimed to entertain and captivate audiences with a blend of history, mystery, and fictionalized storytelling. While it took creative liberties, the show provided viewers with an imaginative exploration of the UFO phenomenon and its intrigue surrounding Project Blue Book.
So, what are your thoughts? Do
What
you
are my
believe that,
thoughts?
well, for our viewers first, do you believe that these stories are proof that aliens do exist and are flying in our skies? Or is it just the imagination of from those who long for more out there beyond our planet? Make sure you let us know in the comments what you think is. Now, what are your thoughts, Richard?
My thoughts are as Ray Parker Jr. eloquently said, there's something strange in our neighborhood.
I was going to say, in the infamous words of Michael Jackson, I always feel like somebody's watching
That
me.
was Rockwell.
No, Michael Jackson sang that part. Rockwell was the main singer of the song, but the whole I always feel like somebody's watching me is Michael Jackson.
Possibly.
It is. Look it up.
That's it. Again, I'm a skeptic on that.
That's why I said, look it up. The proof is there.
So,
The proof is out there.
the proof is out there.
Yes. Speaking of which, next week we will be discussing the mystery of Groom Lake. So make sure to mark your calendars and set your alarm for 8:30 Central, 9:30 Eastern. That's 7:30
7:30
Mountain,
Mountain.
6:30 Pacific.
Yep.
And if you'd like to suggest anything for future episodes or just send us a comment on how we've done, you can email us at info@skepticpsychic.com. Also, check out our website, info@skepticpsychic. We do have some of our old episodes up there, as well as some blogs that we've written. And is there anything I've forgotten tonight?
Just keep looking up at the skies. Somewhere out there, you'll know you will have unpleasant nightmares.
And sweet dreams, everybody. Good night.
Good night.